Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Charlotte Markey. She's a psychologist and author of the book, Adultish, the Body Image Book for Life. There's an excerpt from that book on KevinMD titled, How to Build a Healthier Diet Without Overthinking. Charlotte, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start by briefly sharing your story and journey.
So I'm a psychologist, as you said. I'm a professor at Rutgers University, and I am the author of a number of books at this point. The last few are a part of a series, the Body Image Book series, and this most recent one is meant for teens and young adults.
All right. And there's an excerpt on that book on KevinMD. It's titled How to Build a Healthier Diet Without Overthinking. Now, for those who didn't get a chance to read this particular excerpt, tell us what it's about.
Well, I think a lot of people get confused in terms of what they should be eating because there's a lot of conflicting messaging,
Yeah.
whether it be a news story, a post on social media. We get a lot of conflicting information about what a quote unquote healthy diet should look like. And as a psychologist, part of what I'm interested in is not just that people eat nutrient dense food, but that they have a healthy relationship with food, that they're not consumed with anxiety and worry. And, I always say, don't make eating a homework project, right? It's not a math problem of counting and adding and solving, and it should be an enjoyable experience.
So on social media, and my daughter's on social media a lot, and I see so many information on different diets, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat. So just give us a sense of that world of conflicting information and how a patient or a consumer is just overwhelmed by that and confused as to what to do next.
Well, I think most of us want to do what's best for ourselves, for our bodies, for our health. And so we often seek out this information. And once you seek it out nowadays in an algorithm media landscape, you will get all sorts of conflicting messages, right? So you get to avoid all carbohydrates,
Yeah,
avoid all sugar, avoid all fat,
yeah.
avoid meat, right? They're usually very kind of cut and dry, like avoid a whole food group messages. And if you pay attention to all of them, there's no foods left to eat. And I think for a lot of people, then they feel like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And most registered dietitians, nutrition scientists, psychologists who study these issues don't think you should cut out any food. We think that you should eat all foods, enjoy all foods, every food fits, and that's a much more psychologically healthy way to approach food.
So tell us some practical tips that they can do when confronted with a lot of conflicting information. From your perspective as a psychologist, what can consumers do?
Something we talk about is protective filtering. And what that means is you need to protect yourself by filtering out information that is not helpful to you. So if you are following some sort of diet guru on Instagram or TikTok, and you realize this is not for you, this is not going to be helpful, which frankly, it's very unlikely to be. Most diets fail and result in more weight gain than weight loss. Um, you need to unfollow. You need to disengage, or
Hmm.
you need to protect yourself by filtering that out of your world. That is the nice thing about the current media landscape, is that we do have some choice and we can get rid of some of those harmful messages.
And in terms of asking questions to see whether this particular influencer is right for me or not, what kind of questions can a consumer or patient ask themselves to determine that?
Anytime the message is too clear cut, too simple, and too absolute, it's not going to be evidence based. So anyone who says this will work for everybody, this is all you have to do is this one thing, those are red flags, right? Because we all have different appetites, body sizes, nutritional preferences, nutritional needs. So anytime you get the message that like everyone should be doing one certain thing, you know that is not actually evidence-based messaging and you should avoid that.
Can you tell us a story or a case study of that practical advice in action where someone may have taken that advice and made some appreciable change and moved that needle? So, what would be a story of that?
Well, I interview people when I work on my books, and I've worked with people in recovery from eating disorders for many years. So I see very often once people disengage from what we call diet culture or this messaging about, you have to do this, you can't do this, you must eat this, you must not eat that, that they feel a huge sense of relief, that they feel really a weight is lifted off their shoulders. Because think about it, we have to eat about every few hours optimally for the sake of our health and survival. So if every few hours, and oftentimes a lot of the time in between, is consumed by worry or shame or angst about what we're eating or trying not to eat, that can really destroy your day,
Mm.
one meal at a time, 1 hour at a time. And when people feel the freedom to disengage from thinking about food in this way, from unfollowing the messaging that would suggest it's imperative, it really can be life-changing.
As I mentioned earlier, that excerpt is from your book. It's called Adultish, the Body Image Book for Life. So tell us what this book is about. What are some of the key messages from the book?
So the book is really a guide for mental and physical health for teens and young adults. And body image is sort of the thread that weaves all of these topics together. And I conceptualize body image very broadly, in that it is really essentially how comfortable we are in our own skin, how well are we taking care of ourselves. And I try to integrate some of the latest science with personal stories, questions and answers, myths, expert advice. It's really a different approach in that it is evidence-based, but it's also self-help. So it's meant to be really accessible and kind of fun, and you can look through a chapter at a time. And my goal is to help young people. All we hear about, it seems these days, is that young people are in crisis,
Yeah.
right? The pandemic was really difficult for all of us, but especially for young people who were in middle school and high school during the start of the pandemic. And many of them have delays, whether it be socially, academically, interpersonally, and problems in terms of mental health. And so this is meant to be a comprehensive resource for that group of young people who can really use, I think, some evidence-based and reliable information, right? TikTok is fun, but it should be viewed much more as entertainment than as a
Mm.
source of health information.
So tell us some evidence-based examples that these teenagers can glean from your book as it relates to healthy eating and body image. What are some misperceptions that they may be seeing on social media that you can clear up?
Well, I think some of what we were talking about already, the misperception that dieting is a clear-cut path to weight loss,
Mm.
that our bodies are infinitely malleable, right? Our bodies, we don't try to change our height because we know that's about 80 to 90% genetically determined. Our weight, depending on the study, is 50 to 80% genetically determined. So there's really only so much we can do to shape ourselves into the beauty ideals many of us aspire to. A lot of this book is about treating yourself with care and compassion and acceptance, because we are not going to all be supermodels or celebrities or even influencers.
And from a psychological perspective, you talk about acceptance that that body image is already, some percentage is predetermined genetically. What are some techniques that readers in your book can use to gain some of that acceptance?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of strategies I talk about to improve body image. And one of them is something we've already mentioned, which is to limit social media use and to take care in our social media or media engagement more generally. But we can also work on practicing gratitude. Gratitude has been found to improve mental health in general
Mhm.
and body image in particular. So focusing more on what we actually like about ourselves. And I run through how we can do that, right? There's a lot of commercials and messaging about fixing ourselves because that's how people make money.
Yeah.
If we're convinced we need to be fixed and we need products and plans and purchases to make that happen, to make ourselves acceptable, then that is going to make a lot of people money. In contrast, if we are more self-accepting and we actually appreciate things about ourselves, then we're not going to go out and buy all of those things. So there's really an inequality in terms of the messaging we get because of consumerism. But I try to talk more about gratitude and acceptance and appreciation and how we can nurture those things and sort of be the best version of ourselves without that sense of discontent or shame or insecurity that plagues many people.
I'm an internal medicine primary care physician, and as you can imagine, this topic of healthy eating comes up pretty frequently in the exam room. So, in a limited time visit, do you have any high yield tips that I can share with my patients in terms of improving their relationship with food?
Yeah, I mean, internal medicine physicians are often the first point of contact, as you know. People come to you with every problem they have, and a lot of them have to do with eating and how they feel about themselves, right? We know that even primary care providers, a majority of visits are actually mental health driven,
Mhm.
not just physical health driven. So I think some really great advice is if someone's really struggling to talk to a registered dietitian, right? So go to an expert in food who can actually help you think through what you're eating and if that's really what's best for you. But also just I think sometimes what people need to hear from doctors is don't worry about the details so much,
Mhm.
right? That you need to eat regularly to function as a human being. Don't worry about deprivation, right? We're so used to, I think, feeling like doctors are going to say, don't eat sugar, don't eat fat, don't eat this. And all of those messages start to become really counterproductive. So I think if people hear from medical professionals, don't worry about the details, nourish yourself. What is possible for you right now? What can you afford? What do you have time for? Do you want to talk to an expert? Let me refer you to an expert. Do you have questions? Right. So I think there's a lot of shame surrounding food and eating. And in order for people to do well when it comes to eating and caring for themselves, we need to remove a lot of the shame.
We're talking to Charlotte Markey. She's the author of Adultish, the Body Image Book for Life. She's a psychologist, and today's KevinMD article is titled How to Build a Healthier Diet Without Overthinking. Charlotte will end with some take home messages to the KevinMD audience.
Yeah. None of us are going to be perfect when it comes to how we look or how we eat. And yet we can be compassionate towards ourselves and do the best job that we can within our means to take good care of ourselves. And the books I write are all about how to do that in an effective way without feeling oppressed or feeling like it's a homework problem that we can't get away from. So self-acceptance is a big piece of the puzzle, but there's a lot more in the books.
The book is called Adultish, the Body Image Book for Life. Charlotte, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and insight, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for all the work you do.